We're in an era where we believe that low fat and low sugar means healthy, when it's the contrary. The standard has dropped. You've got screen addiction, a society that lives on snacks. You combine that with all the artificial things that we consume. The child's brain development is 85% developed by the age of 3. That means what the child consumes in the first 3 years is going to have an effect moving forward for the remainder of that child's life. It's not just a proverbial metaphor, you are what you eat. You quite literally are what you consume. And we're in an era where cognitive issues are on the rise, behavioural disorders are on the rise. We have to put more weight on nutrition. We need to address processed food, processed sugar, low-fat manufactured produce, and be very, very conscious and hold ourselves into account when we are preparing what our kids are going to be consuming. And if we don't address this now, we are going to have very, very unhealthy kids in an unhealthy world.
Welcome to the Diet Doctor podcast, where we discuss the science of nutrition and high performance, offering practical tools for everyday life.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of the Diet Doctor podcast. And today is going to be a brief episode, but a very, very weighty episode, a very important episode, because I want to talk about a topic that is dear to me and it's dear to a lot of us, and it should be, whether you have children or not, how to raise healthy kids in an unhealthy world. Because we are in an era where technologically we have progressed tremendously. And in the last 50 years, we've progressed technologically more than we have in the previous 500 years, which is remarkable. Yet why have we regressed when it comes to health and well-being, especially our children? Even the health food aisle itself at the grocery store now contains some of the unhealthiest products there are or a human being could consume. And it is affecting not just our physiological diseases, chronic diseases, but cognitive disorders for children, their ability to learn, their ability to develop and become fully functional adults. And on that note, we have to keep in mind that our children are not, the goal with children is not just to make them smaller versions of yourself or minions of yourself. I like to use the Arabic concept and the Islamic concept of tarbiyah, not education. Education it doesn't holistically do the word tarbiyah justice. Tarbiyah is a process and it is a responsibility of the teacher, of the parents, and it involves two processes. One is called takhliyah and the other one is called tahliyah. Takhliyah is getting rid of or helping someone suppress these, the bad traits and characteristics that we all have, the anger, the anxiety, the lust, addiction, all of these things that a human being has as part of their biography, and bring them or try and suppress them by bringing to the surface the luminosity that each child has been brought with. Because our goal is not just to send them to school to acquire utilitarian skills so that they can, be competent in numeracy and literacy. That's important, and it's important in the realm of nutrition because they can't even read the labels that exist these days. But it's not just to do that. It's not just utilitarian values, numeracy, literacy. It's how to become fully functional adults that will serve humanity, not be a burden or a stress to mankind instead. And that's what we are finding. The standard has dropped. And what does this have to do with nutrition? Absolutely everything. Because from a molecular level, from a biological level, from a cellular level, everything that the child consumes becomes who the child is. And it's very critical at a very early age, because I'll give you one statistic that'll wake you up. And it hits home every time I repeat it out loud, that a child's brain development is 85% developed by the age of 3. So by the age of 3, a child's brain is 85% developed. If you let that sink in, that means what the child consumes in the first 3 years is going to have an effect that will be, in terms of how weighty it would be, percentage-wise, 85% in weight moving forward for the remainder of that child's life. And it is comprised of the foods and the building blocks that we consume. It's not just a proverbial metaphor, you are what you eat. You quite literally are what you consume. Your tissue is formed from the building blocks that you consume. Even your skeleton is formed from the building blocks that you consume. And the reason for that is because the tissue itself is also skeleton. The skeleton is tissue, tissue is skeleton, tissue is muscle, tissue is the organs. All of the foods that you eat form who you are. And I've mentioned in the past the blue zones and the longest living communities and how their bone density gets better as they get older, because every 10 years you get a new skeleton. Every 48 hours you may get some new muscle tissue after a hard workout, and that's why you're sore. You get delayed onset muscle soreness and you create hypertrophy, the fiber expands and you become more resilient or more tolerant to the stress that the body is exposed to. But every 10 years you get a new skeleton, and it's made from the food that you eat. And structurally, in the West, we are getting more fragile. We've got more cases of osteoporosis, more cases of arthritis, while the alleged third world countries are not regressing the same way we are. Now, it is harder in modernity to ensure that children are healthier, because by default, they're more sedentary. We've got access, that is readily available to children, like the screens, the iPads and the TV screens and the phones, and we're passing these things on to the kids just to shut them up. And the damaging effects that it's having, and the long-term damage that it's causing, is profound. And you've got screen addiction, a society that lives on snacks. You combine that with all the artificial things that we consume, an overconsumption, a sensory overconsumption. The senses are overconsuming what they're receiving. The body's receiving calories that it does not need, toxins that it does not need. The environment compared to the past is absolutely chaotic. And that has proved to be very, very challenging in modernity. It was a lot easier in the past, where there was no such thing as a smartphone, there was no iPads. Now, these things serve a purpose and they can be used for good, but they can also be disastrous. We come from a generation whereby entertainment was playing outdoors or even indoors, but not with a screen in front of you. I remember the days where you'd go outside, you'd play cricket until you'd get bored of that and you start playing footy, till you get bored of that and you switch back to cricket until the street lights went off. And that's what it used to be. Today, it's an exposure to processed food multiple times per day, eating snacks as meals. Food is pre-packaged, whether it's for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We don't eat whole foods like we used to. The school's canteens are no better than the pantry at home. There is no, I know there are some schools that have an auditing process of what goes into the canteen and what is being allowed to be served to the kids. But it's by no means, Australia is by no means Japan, where every school has an allocated nutritionist by law. Can you imagine? In the Japanese culture, every school has to have an allocated nutritionist by law, and what they consume is dictated by that nutritionist. And they understand the weight of what you consume and its effect on how you develop physically, cognitively, and also your ability to retain information, not just to acquire, but retain information for a prolonged period of time. And that's what education really is about. How do we address this issue? So we've identified that, okay, there are a lot of problems in the pantry, there's a lot of problems in the grocery stores, the canteens, an overconsumption from a sensory perspective when it comes to the screens. How do we adjust this? How do we fix this? Even the inventors of said technology don't allow their own children to sit in front of a screen for more than 20 minutes per day, and sometimes 20 minutes every second or third day. We pass the screen to the kids just to buy a little bit of time for them to be quiet so we can have a conversation with someone, or partake in something that we want to partake in, and we just need the kids to be quiet for a little while. So we pass them the phone and, put on a YouTube video or put on a video game. That is one issue. The other issue is we don't know how to navigate the grocery store, and that's why our pantries are toxic, and that's why our fridges are filled with snacks rather than food. We're in an era where we believe that low fat and low sugar means healthy, when it's the contrary. What does a kid's diet look like? What does a child's diet look like? An abundance of good fats, enough protein for development. Micronutrients need to be paid attention to, because although macros will play a significant role in how you look and how you feel, micronutrients are what will protect you from chronic disease and cognitive decline and physiological decline. And what does it mean? What is the difference between macros and micros? Macros are the proteins, carbs, and fats, but we're in an era where we're obsessed, absolutely obsessed with reading calories, grams of protein, carbs, and fats, and we're not paying attention to the micronutrient intake of children. We're not paying attention to, getting enough calcium, getting calcium from a variety of different sources, not just dairy, leafy greens, for instance. We're not paying attention to vitamins and minerals. And that ultimately will change the way a child develops and the way an adult will function, and even an adult's ability to fight off disease and distress. So we have to go back to whole foods to address the concerns that we are facing at a departmental level in schools. So, for instance, what does a healthy day of eating look like for a child? Ideally, it wouldn't be cereal in the morning unless it's a whole food cereal. Kids need to get used to, or get their taste buds acquired to, things like oatmeal, which will keep you satiated and give you fuel for your body and your mind for the entire duration of the day. We have to remember that the brain is made out of fat, but the fuel source for the brain is still glycogen, carbohydrates. So there are healthy versions of the cereals that we see that are readily available in the grocery stores. Then we've got recess and lunch and so on and so forth. Almost 2/3 of the students that go to school these days, especially in schools that are in lower socioeconomic backgrounds, go to school without breakfast. That's why we have breakfast campaigns in a lot of the public schools, where fresh produce is made available for kids before they go to class so that they can concentrate. 2/3 of them don't have anything packed for recess or for lunch. And if they do have something packed, it's a snack, it's not a meal. It's an edible substance, but it's not food. So what they pack is edible, but it's not food. Yogurt, we're opting for low fat. When anything that is processed, yogurt that has the fat removed or even flavors that are added to it, has undergone some sort of a manufacturing process. And the fact that it's processed changes the way that your body digests and absorbs it. And it also changes what that food group has to offer. So that's the other issue. Don't be afraid of whole foods, irrespective of what the fat content is or the carb content is. If you look at an avocado, it's all fat. It's not bad for you. Coke Zero has 0 calories and 0 sugar, but it's bad for you, filled with toxins and chemicals. Kids need whole foods. They need more calories than what we think they need in order to reach their full physical and cognitive potential and development. And they need the calories to avoid the stunt of growth that we're seeing. We're seeing stunts of growth. We're seeing kids not reaching their full potential physiologically. And we're in an era where cognitive issues are on the rise. Behavioural disorders are on the rise. And I had an interesting conversation with an NDIS provider recently, whereby they were paying attention to what the patients that they had, or what the participants that they had were consuming, and were regulating what they were consuming. And they were reporting to me some profound changes, where you had children that were pretty much non-verbal, that we're now sitting down, making eye contact with you, having conversations with you, partaking in reading a book together with you. And all of this occurred, all these fantastic changes occurred just by changing the way they ate. These are not transformations that occurred as a consequence of more therapy or medication. It was merely changing what they ate. So we have to give these things weight because they are very weighty. A human being will exercise or partake in some sort of leisurely activity for a certain amount of time per day. But if you look at how much time we allocate to consuming food and how important food is on a day-to-day basis, we understand, or we come to the realization that we have to put more weight on nutrition than we do on even a child going out and getting some exercise. Because food is something that you do multiple times per day. Exercise is something that you may or may not do once a day. And if we want to see issues like ADHD, anxiety, and poor sleep among kids, especially poor sleep, improve, we need to address processed food, processed sugar, low-fat manufactured produce, and be very, very conscious and hold ourselves into account when we are preparing what our kids are going to be consuming, whether they are with us or whether they are at school. So we have to start building healthy habits early, expose them and get their taste buds used to what real food tastes like. We're in an era where we consume foods that have 15 to 30 ingredients, so we don't even know what we're eating anymore. We can't taste real food. I've had many friends tell me, I can't taste vegetables. I can't taste salad, because your taste buds are not accustomed to eating whole food. And the reason why that's very dangerous is because as you get older, you want to be able to have or be able to gauge what your body needs, because your taste buds play a role in that. For example, when you're younger, you have a certain inclination or satiety towards a certain food because your body may need the nutrients that food has to offer. And if you think about the foods that you like now as an adult versus the foods that you used to like, and vice versa, the foods that you used to hate, now you love, the foods that you used to love, now you may dislike. And that's not just a coincidence. That is, for the most part, a physiological demand. So as your body changes, ages, etc., your body starts to require different types of nutrients, and therefore the brain will release a peptide to the taste buds that will say, you know what, I need some more vitamin K now, so I need you to start acquiring a liking to, leafy green vegetables such as spinach or kale. That's just a hypothetical. But as you get older, you'll have a nutrient deficiency, and your body will be in demand of a certain nutrient more so than when you're at a different age. And the body, without your consent, the brain will change the way food tastes to you, provided that relationship between the brain and the taste buds has not been subjected to a severe amount of trauma from the amount of processed food that we eat. We're able to navigate that space and gauge what we need based on what we are craving, because there is a link between the two. If you're eating processed food, an abundance of flavors, and you cannot eat a meal without copious amounts of sauce on top, you really don't know what food tastes like. So when your brain is telling you, get me said food because I need, nutrient X, Y, and Z, nutrients X, Y, and Z, your brain is unable to gauge that. You're unable to gauge that from in the decision-making processes, because you don't know what real food tastes like anymore. And that's something that we have to be able to work on. Because if you can gauge what your body needs based on, your activity levels for the day, or the age that you are now, and what your nutrient quota should be for certain food groups, it's a very, very powerful tool for a healthy life that is filled with longevity. So we need to set that structure for ourselves in order for the kids to follow in said structure. They need to be exposed to what whole foods taste like, single ingredient foods. What does a carrot taste like on its own? What does celery taste like on its own, without the marinades and the sauces and the spices and everything else? There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to get back to single ingredient foods and getting in tune with our taste buds. And you'll notice even on the world's most popular cooking shows, the best chefs, or the ones that are rewarded the most, or the ones that wow the judges the most, are the ones that can take minimal ingredients and create a dish that tastes fantastic. Because it is very easy to hide behind flavors. If I give you 15 spices and 15 ingredients, it's easy to make something taste good. But if you've got minimal ingredients, it's very difficult. You can't hide bad cooking with minimal ingredients. We need to get back to minimal ingredients in our foods. Some companies are making a positive move in that direction. I've recently noticed even some protein bars whereby the ingredients list is quite literally 4, 5, or 6 ingredients, or even less. And that's a step in the right direction. We need to rewire our brain to understand what whole foods taste like in order to appreciate them. And until we do that, it's not going to improve. We are going to continue to regress. And in our society, in even just the Australian community itself, we have I wouldn't say obesity, but 85% of our children that are under the age of 5 are overweight. Let that sink in for a little bit. 85% of children under the age of 5 are not obese. The percentage for obesity is less than that, but overweight under the age of 5, 85%. And I think I've shared with you before in the past where I've received phone calls where children have died in their sleep, and I've asked to go onto a radio interview, for instance, because a child went to sleep, didn't wake up because of no oxygen going to their brain. When I asked in one particular circumstance, what this particular child weighed, it was 80 kilos. 80 kilos doesn't sound like a lot, but it is if the child's 8 years of age. It's a lot of weight. I'm not 80 kilos. 80 kilos for an 8-year-old is a lot. I have come across in the consultation processes of schools and seminars for schools, children, and they are children because they're in grade 9, that are weighing in excess of 200 kilograms, not pounds, 200 kilograms, 230, 250 kilograms in grade 9. Mobility is an issue. Long-term damage is almost guaranteed. And even if these individuals lose weight, sadly, more surgery has to be done to remove loose skin. We need to be able to, supervising our kids and even train our kids themselves to be able to be conscious in a healthy way of their body. We want a healthy body consciousness whereby if we start to gain weight in a very bad way or we start to go in a bad direction, we can hold ourselves into account and say, hang on a second, I've gained 5 kilos in as little as 2 weeks. That is not acceptable. Because a weight discrepancy of 5 kilos takes my organs 12 months to adapt to. 5 kilos gained in less than 12 months, or 5 kilos gained takes 12 months for your organs to adapt to. That is how dangerous rapid weight gain can be. And what's more dangerous than rapid weight gain is weight fluctuation. And that is also on the rise. The elasticity of the skin, yes, is suffering because when the person gains weight, the elastin, if you grab a rubber band and pull it back and forth, after a certain amount of times, it doesn't go back to its original form. And that's what's happening. But the damage that it's causing, rapid weight fluctuation, that's the physiological damage. Imagine the psychological damage that weight fluctuation causes. Body dysmorphia. Clients that have lost over 100 kilograms in body weight that are still trying to shop for clothing, and I've got patients like this, they're still shopping for clothing for what they once looked like. So they're still going to stores where they'll be trying to purchase clothing that would fit them as they once were when they were 100 kilos heavier. That's the psychological trauma that is associated with it. And if we don't address this now, we are going to have very, very unhealthy kids in an unhealthy world. We know that the world is unhealthy as it is now, the circumstances that we're facing now. But that's not an excuse. It is incumbent upon us that although our environment and the context in which we are in is unhealthy, it's our responsibility to make sure that our kids remain healthy. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.